Hey, how are you guys doing? How are you guys doing? As always, thank you for rocking and rolling with me. Thank you for tuning in to another awesome, amazing podcast episode here at Brian's Place. How are you guys doing? How are you guys doing? This year is almost over. Can you guys believe that? It's been great. A lot of awesome things have been happening. Big shout out to my mom. Last weekend she turned the awesome 7-0, and so I was blessed to fly up to the Bay Area and surprise her. She was greatly surprised, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. Always great being with family, and but I'm a firm believer that honor begets honor. If you sow honor, you'll reap honor. And so I try to live by that, and I'm so thankful to God for my mom, for the awesome woman that she is, and all that she has and continues to instill in me, even to this day. So yeah, big shout out to her. Some awesome things are coming up. Definitely keep you guys updated. So today we are talking about the reality of two realities, the reality of two realities. All right, so let me break it down for you. So everyone's familiar with, in the book of Genesis in chapters 17 and 18, when God made a covenant, a promise to Abraham that his seed shall be as many as the stars. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. And the awesome thing is that God's promise to Abraham wasn't based on what Abraham saw, and it wasn't dependent on what Abraham saw as well. All Abraham saw was how old he was and how he thought he couldn't have a single child in his old age. Matter of fact, in Genesis chapter 17, verse 17, it says Abraham fell face down and laughed. Right? Basically, Abraham was cracking up, laughing at the thought that in his old ripe age that he would bear a child, and not only bear a child but be a father to many nations. So um yeah, that was just cracked Abraham up. But God, everyone say, but God. Don't you love a God when God intervenes in the midst of what we see, in the midst of how we may feel? That's so awesome. So the God's promise to Abraham was one reality, and the other reality was that God, I'm sorry, let me back up. So one reality was that Abraham was old, he didn't feel he could have children. But the other reality was what God had promised him. um what God's The other reality was what God saw Abraham as a father, and as many nations. So it's just a true testament of however you may currently see yourself in your current state. God not only sees you, but he sees the end result of who you are to become. And if you can just endure through the process and persevere and push and pray and press your way through the process, you'll become that better version of yourself that God already sees you as. And that is just so awesome. Also, over in the book of Numbers, chapter 13 and 14, um, everyone knows the story. God sent the spies to spy out the land, and they got intimidated by the giants in the land. And so, one reality in this instance was that God had prepared the promised land for the Israelites. And he had specifically said, send men out to check out the land I'm giving you. So he told them, I'm giving you a land, go check it out. But the other reality was that there were giants in the land, there were giants in the promised land. And unfortunately, they the majority, I should say, all except Joshua and Caleb, focused on the wrong reality. It would have been great if the Israelites realized that, okay, so if God said the land was theirs, knowing that whatever God says, it's going to happen. And I believe like the giants in the land were not the real problem. The real problem was a giant of fear that the spies watered. I believe that whatever you water and whatever you focus on, good or bad, it will grow. So, God may have promised you this, He may promise you that, He may promise you a house, healing, a spouse, or maybe family reconciliation. And I believe a key factor in one reality overtaking another is being so locked into the promise in the midst of the process, in the midst of what you see. And it's like, I think about an airplane. When an airplane approaches a dark cloud, the pilot doesn't turn around and be like, uh-oh, I see a dark cloud. Sorry, folks, we got to turn back. It's like, nah, the pilot knows how to navigate in the midst of the storm. And so I'm not who this is for. You may be dealing with some things. You may be dealing with what you hear. You may God may have promised you something. He may have spoken you something, but what you see may not align up with what God has spoken, and may seem very opposite actually of what God has spoken. But I just want to encourage you, if you can just like really hold on and really anchor your trust into who God is and anchor your trust into His Word. Because once you have a greater understanding and revelation of who God is, you then have a greater understanding of His Word. He is God. He cannot lie because He is God. And also, according to His Word, whatever He says, it shall accomplish His purpose. So if you can gain a hold of those two truths, then it really helps you. And that's why, it's so important to have your faith built up in the spiritual stimulator. Pilots, before they ever go in the air, they go through a stimulator on the ground and they prepare for what they're going to encounter in the air. So when they get in the air, they're like, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to navigate through this. The reality of two realities. Both realities are real. God's promises are real. But what you may currently see, what you may be currently feel, how things look like, it's also real. This earthly realm is real. And so a little girl's riding the bike and she falls. She goes crying to her daddy, saying, my knees hurt, my knees hurt, my knees hurt. And so one reality is that indeed her knee is hurt, but the other reality is that she is healed. And so what happens is one reality eventually overtakes the other reality. So I just want to come on here and encourage you guys that may the reality of your dreams, the reality of your vision, the reality of all that God has spoken to you and shown you be far more greater than the reality of what you may currently see, causing the reality of God's promises to overtake any other reality. And it's so important to know the voice of God. He said in His Word, my sheep know my voice, and to another they will not go astray. So if you guys have ever played that game, Two Truths and a Lie, it's like you have to see, okay, what's the truth and what's a lie. And also, in relation to that, it's important not to accept someone else's lie as your truth. You may share something with someone, they may not believe it. Oh, that's too big. No, you shouldn't dream that big. You can't do that. I can't ever see you do that. You should try something else. But when you know that you know that you know that you know in your knower what God has equipped you to do, what God has given you the capacity to do, when you know what God has spoken to you and show you, you can hold on to His Word and allow His Word to be the anchor, because His Word never changes. And no matter what people may say, just a side note on that, it's also important to watch what you share with people, Joseph. um, no matter what people say, no matter what it seems like, hold on to God's word. His word never changes. His promises never changes. Um, Back at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, I did this podcast episode talking about the pandemic and just how, so like it came about, I want to say in February and March of 2020. Well, it was like back in December, everyone was like, oh, 2020 is going to be the year. God's saying this, God's giving me this promise. God's giving me that promise. Oh, it's going to be great. And then, like, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this pandemic comes, like, whoosh. And so the pandemic, yes, was definitely one reality. But the other reality was there was still promises waiting to be manifested. It was like in January, God may have given you a promise for something that was to happen in December. But in between January and December, God may not always tell you what you have to go through. But the awesome thing is, God's promises aren't dependent upon the pandemic. Way back, even before God said, "Let there be," He knew long down the road there would be a pandemic. So, in the midst of the clouds, in the midst of the blurriness of the pandemic, it was, I believe, so important for people to hold on to their faith, hold on to what they know God had showed them. And so even now, here in 2023, as we prepare for 2024, no matter what, your due season is coming. Your due season is coming. Don't give up. Don't give up. I know it's tough. I know the reality of the pain is tough. The reality of having to carry something for 9 months, the pain, the awkward sleeping habits, eating habits, the pain, the discomfort, morning sickness, and then all of a sudden the contractions start getting closer and closer. There's more pain, more struggling, but you're getting closer. So if you can hold on to what you know is coming, you'll be able to give birth. You'll be able to walk in and receive the fullness of what God has for you. The reality of two realities. Choose wisely and know what God has spoken, He will fulfill. As always, this is BDP, Brian David Porter. Still living in purpose, on purpose, intentionally. Love y'all to life. Y'all are great. Till next time, you guys will be blessed. Talk to you soon.